and very relatable discussions, with the times recently. So we'll start with the basics. Um, what makes a moderator? Like, how do you become a mod? Like, where do you start?
Well, I'm sure Lucky has a different opinion than I do too, but the place that I started was I just wanted to be more involved with the channels that I really cared about. And obviously, there's lots of different ways that you can do that, but especially if you don't have a lot of money, but you do have time, being available in a channel to help answer questions, to give people resources, to that's kind of the helping sort of attitude that generally starts it. And then once you are modded, you become either more or less of a right hand person for the streamer. You're at the very basic level. You're just timing out things that shouldn't be said. But I think something that we're going to talk about today is that there's kind of levels to the moderation game, and there's levels that we have observed now in the last few years as moderation has kind of evolved. I think it's become something even more complex than it was back when I first became a mod. And I'm really excited to talk about some of those more advanced things. But at the very bottom, basic level, the main thing about being a mod is just being there. I think if you were to ask a streamer, why did you mod someone? They would say, well, they were always there. It's like 80% of it's just showing up, right? And then, they were helpful, they were friendly, they were professional, and they weren't the kind of person that were always just jumping into arguments, flaming other people. They would have a generally level head about them, is some of the traits that I'm sure that streamers looked for originally before knowing that they had maybe a business background or anything else.
Yeah.
Lucky, what would you say about that?
I'd agree. For me, kind of how I got my start was exactly that, just showing up. I was there for every single stream in the first stream that I was modded in. I knew how the person liked things run. I knew what they wanted to see, what they didn't want to see, that sort of thing. It's really important, though, if you are a mod, to have that thick skin. I know everybody says, well, you gotta have thick skin. No, really have thick skin, especially with if you're moderating larger streams, because you're going to have those people that come in that might be used to one way that chat can go, and then if they come into a different stream, they start using that same behavior from the other chat. They come into yours if you run.
Yeah, I think that's a,
Or
a really
claim
important
to use.
point.
Yeah.
Like, the moderators take a lot of heat because and that's like kind of the purpose, right? Is it doesn't reflect so hard on the streamer if someone gets timed out, right? It's like now it's like between the moderators and that viewer. But the downside is the mods will get attacked, and there's obviously like nasty people, and it's really important as a mod to keep your cool and not be like just like take the sword and think you have like all this power, you can do what you want and get too power hungry. So yeah, I mean, having thick skin is definitely really important, and just not being like obsessed with the power and using it responsibly.
To lord over people.
Yeah, I guess that's one of the things that you want to avoid. You're talking about things that you want to look for. Something that you want to avoid is someone who wants to be a moderator a little bit too much.
Right.
The kind of person who asks to be mod, and this goes for all platforms, right? And I'm sure everybody has a similar thing that they say, but the kind of person who asks for mod is not the kind of person who should be mod.
That's like rule number one.
Rule number one.
It's literally rule number one. Don't ask to be mod.
Don't ask to be mod. If you're mod level quality, you will be recognized as that fairly early on. The mods keep track. They know who's the if a streamer asks their group of mods, hey, who's somebody that you think has been showing up a lot lately who would be a good candidate for a mod? If you've been a good chat citizen, you will have your name brought up. Trust me, you don't have to ask for the mod. You just kind of are seen as a mod by your interactions. So don't even bother asking. If there's an application form, great, that's one thing. But generally speaking, mods don't even come from application forms. They come from how things are progressing in chat. So
yeah, I mean, I've actually had experience doing both, where I've had you know, I'll look for people in chat, but sometimes like it can be really hard to gauge like who wants to take that extra step. So I have actually opened moderator applications in the past, but obviously like I always get like some random names that enter, but it's always going to be the people that you recognize and then they applied. Like it's kind of like the second step there. Hunter, have you done anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, HB Fox handles he's my broadcast manager. He's 50% of the stream, and he's the 50% of the stream that's not on camera. He handles all of that stuff himself. He's opened up moderator applications twice, and Toby, you've missed them both times. And sometimes we get some really interesting responses. Like I'm not going over them, but I hear the reports after the fact. Sometimes we get the most bizarre, I mean, innocuous, but bizarre responses to them. You can still tell who it was, and you almost want to like take it seriously because you're like, well, I mean, they applied themselves and they've been there for like 3 years. But yeah, there are people who stand out above everybody else, and I think for the things that stand out for me, there's a diplomatic element there, right? We have a lot of our mods love to have lighthearted, trolling in the channel. We've got that kind of culture where it's jovial but sassy. At the same time, that cannot be the overarching quality. That cannot be like the dominant aspect. There has to be this diplomatic element. You can usually read that really quickly. Somebody who can change their tone and change their subject really quickly into something that helps. As we were talking about before, I mentioned people who come into the stream used to a different type of, I think you were talking about this, used to a different type of culture in another stream. A normally sassy, back talking, jovial and joking mod can suddenly become really serious and be like, hey, just make sure that you familiarize yourself with the rules. They have to be able to have that adaptability to the situation, and that comes from both. I think we're looking at the applications, but more from seeing them in the chat, because the other mods who are the ones who are really going to be deciding a lot of this, who's going to be coming in, get to note that they've seen them day after day and how their behavior is and what their approaches are beyond what they can write. Because sometimes you could be a trash bag and write a really good, write a really good resume somehow. So I think it's a balance of those two things.
Something that I was going to bring up is that mods are kind